guys, welcome back to another episode of the Citizen Sit Down. This week, Ryan and I are chatting about positivity and courage, which are two of our culture points, and we have a lot to say, so let's go! Ryan!
Bree!
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. First of all, let's address, you got a haircut. Cheeky little haircut.
I didn't get a haircut. I attempted, my wife started cutting my hair and our 10-month-old daughter got really upset and thought she was hurting me.
Aww.
So I had to try and finish it in a mirror on my own, and it's really bad. I basically got a step around here. Not a good vibe. I thought I'd look like one of the Vikings from that show, Vikings, but I don't. I look terrible.
Seen it.
I look like someone's taken a hedge trimmer to my head.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't have addressed that then.
Yeah, probably
There
not.
we go.
But anyway, this is us.
So,
That's where we are. That's where we're at. I'm
just waiting for everything to open again.
I cannot wait. Got a guy called Alex, hairdresser, sort me out.
Nice.
Can't wait to get that done. Alex in Pontcanna, if anyone's looking for a hairdresser.
Goji.
Good shout. Goji, come on. Come at me.
So,
Plug.
yeah. So we're going to chat about the last couple of weeks, the talks that you've done. So positivity and courage.
Positivity and courage. Positivity is our personality. Courage is our
Indeed.
character.
Yes. So I thought we'd just jump in with positivity. You were chatting about the story of Joseph and how he found himself in the pit, and actually the positivity was because he knew that God was going to bring him out of it and bring purpose from it. And I want to know, when you're in that pit, it can be really hard to kind of see the way out or the way forward, or how God's going to bring you out of that.
Yeah.
And so my question, I think, is kind of like, what would your advice be to somebody who finds himself in that pit and they're like, well, I just don't see how this is going to work out?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I think, firstly, when you're in something, I think the thing is with Joseph, it was with hindsight. I think God was faithful, and God was faithful, and out of that faithfulness, he kind of expected his faithfulness. He was, he was faithful to Joseph growing up. He'd put this calling on his life. He was giving him these dreams, and he believed they were from God. And then he found himself in a pit, but then he came out of the pit, and then he found himself favor with Potiphar, and then he found himself in a prison, but then he found favor in the prison. And then he came out of prison and he found favor with Pharaoh, and then he became the governor, and then he said, and so I think firstly for him it was like he learned that over time. And I think faith is like a muscle. It's like something that grows and something that you build, and hindsight is an incredible thing. And I think Joseph actually had that. He had the gift of hindsight. And so I think, he's like, well, God's been faithful. And so he was able to see how God was moving in those moments. But I think for so many of us, it's just so hard to see. It's so hard when you're in it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the pit, is like when you're in this pit, Joseph was in, like, it's a deep thing. And sometimes you can look around you and you feel claustrophobic and you can't see a way out. And I think there's this verse in Lamentations. I've got this tattoo. It's sort of like these arrows. And there's this verse in Lamentations, and it says that you shot me in the stomach with arrows from your quiver. And he's basically lamenting, which is what the whole book's about. And it's this sense of, he was like, you kicked me down, you trod me down, I couldn't move, I was basically at the end of myself. You shot me in the stomach with arrows from your quiver. And it's that sense of having that feeling in your stomach, that sense of heartbreak, that's gut-wrenching, like, I don't know what to do. But then he kind of switches whilst he's in it. Nothing's changed in terms of his circumstances, but he just says, but God, I know that you're faithful. I know that you keep your promises. I know that you've got me. And it's in the middle of this lamenting, this pain, this agony. And so I got these out because it's just that sense of, whenever you do feel that feeling in your stomach, that sense of heartbreak, that sense of pain, that gut-wrenching feeling, it's that sense of, what does it look like for us in that to just cling on to God, and just trust that He will make good of it. even if we can't see it. And I think that's so much of this journey of faith and this calling to being a Christian, is because, Jesus didn't say it would be easy. He didn't say it would be safe. People die. People die, and you can't explain it. It's not. But it's trusting that, for God, he doesn't work on our time. He works on his time, and the heavenly perspective is an eternal one. It's not a mortal one. God said God will make it work together for good, even if he doesn't do it in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a hard pill to swallow. But I think that is the calling on our lives as Christians. It's to cling on to that hope, to that anchor, even when we can't see a way out. And I think there is no guarantee that you will see a way out. But yeah, I guess it's just clinging on with all we've got and trusting. He does say that he makes all things work together for the good of those who love him, and he, we see in this story of Joseph that the enemy and people and other things will intend it for evil, but God intends it for good. He works it for his good. The problem is we don't necessarily know what that looks like. We can't even comprehend that.
Yeah.
Even in our deepest pain, like how can you make good of this? The story of Job. How can you? Like, I've always struggled with it, because I think that sense of Job lost his family, and how what do you mean that's restored? You can't just restore a loved one. Like, if you lose a loved one, finding another person isn't going to restore that. Like, that's not. And so, that there are still questions there, but I think it's clinging on to the hope that he makes all things work together for good. He is good, and it's just trusting in that, even when we can't see a way out.
So what would you say to the non-Christian who's never experienced that before, who's never trusted God as we understand him, or how can they know that that's going to happen if they haven't received that before or felt that before?
Yeah, it's hard. I think particularly because the truth is, it's brutal. Life is brutal. Life is tough, and it's hard. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that they had a dog who died like 12 years ago, and they said that they would. It was my dad, actually, and he was saying that he doesn't want to get another dog because he was like, that was just the worst time of his life when his dog died. I was like, so you're gonna give up another 12 years of joy because one day your dog will die. And I think that actually, we talk about courage, but I think, we are called to live and love things that are mortal, that are going to die. Like that is such a brutal thing, but it's also what makes it so beautiful. And I think it's, for anyone who's not a Christian, I don't know what it's like for them trying to understand our perspective and trying to find joy in it. But what I do seem to find is that a lot of people, for some reason, end up finding themselves turning to God or looking for some form of spiritual explanation when the worst happens. And so, I'm like, I just can't, I just see that there is something there in people. There's some inherent thing. There's something that seems to be built in us that seems to search for meaning, purpose, and God. Ultimately, I believe that is God that people feel the need to search for in our darkest moments, because He's got us and He wants to be in them with us. And so, to be honest, I don't really know what to say to that person, but what I've observed is that people do tend to search for God in those times. Yeah. And so what I would say is, like, God knows what you're going through. I think that is also the story, isn't it? Because like, with Joseph being the foreshadowing of Jesus, it's like, well, yeah, like, Jesus was abandoned. Jesus has gone through this. He has suffered. He is, he's been tempted in every way. He died a horrific death on a cross. He was abandoned by all that he loved. He was cut off from the Father. And I think that it is also just knowing that Christmas thing of Emmanuel, Jesus coming to be God with us. It's that he's coming to relate to us.
Yeah.
But he's not here to just relate to us during our party times. He's not here to just relate to us during the everyday. But he wants to relate to us in our pain, and he can relate to us in our pain because he's experienced it. He knows what you go through.
Yeah.
And I don't think God wants to just bring about an easy fix, but I think he wants to be in it with you. I think he wants to like journey through it with you. You can't just click your fingers and, you know, overcome grief or pain. I think it's a process. And I think that God knows that, but he wants to be in that process with you, and he wants to help you deal with stuff properly. I think it is actually a good thing to experience the emotions that are connected with loss and with pain and with grief, because it's important. It's important to, firstly, for healing, but also I think for our own kind of emotional maturity. Yeah. And I think so many of our problems come from trying to shut away these feelings and not feel them and not experience them, and it makes us numb. It makes us quite emotionally dry. It makes it gives us issues that mean that we struggle to connect with other people on a certain level, and I think God wants to heal us from that, and that comes with journeying through that, facing our feelings and our fears. But that's also, you know, there's that scene in the story of Joseph where he basically, his brothers, they threw him into the pit. They're the ultimate reason that he went through all of these things, but at the end he faces them, and it's not, and like all the way through it, God was calling him to basically save a nation, but really what happened was the ultimate thing was he was restoring his family. And I think that's what God wants to do. He wants to restore you better than he found you.
Yeah. I think one of the main things for me in terms of positivity being our personality is finding like a good balance where I'm positive but without being fake. So I'm also being like honest about how I'm actually feeling, because in those moments you want to be positive for sure, but it's actually really hard, like you say, when you're going through grief or loss or whatever it is that you're going through, to actually be like, oh, it's okay though, because I know this is going to happen. Like, you've got to deal with those emotions at the same time. So I just want to know, like, how can we shift our mindset into a different perspective where positivity is our personality, that we're living that out, but not at the compromise of being honest about how we're actually feeling as well.
Yeah, I think there's a good. I think there is sometimes the temptation to kind of fake it till you make it. But I remember I was talking to so like recently my wife. She was applying for this job that she really wanted, and we were talking about it. She was like, "Oh, you know, it's the first time I've really wanted a job in a while. You know, she's been on maternity leave and that." And we talked, and I was like, "Oh, I think it's." And there's that sense, I don't want to get my hopes up. And I think that, like, actually it's really good to get your hopes up for something, and then just, if you don't get it, to be disappointed. And I think there's so much, you know, we try and protect ourselves and we do these things. And I think being positive is, you know, let's ride this roller coaster. I really want this job. I'm really excited about this job. This is the job for me. And if I don't get it, do you know what? I'm gonna cry about it. I'm sad about it. But feel that, embrace it, and then but don't let that stop you getting excited about the next thing. And it's about, like, okay, don't let your current situation affect your future joy. Don't let that happen. Don't, you know, let's feel these feelings. Let's ride this wave. And I think but the problem is, I think so often something hurts us, and so we put up these barriers, and we're like, not gonna let that happen. And I think it's a massive thing with relationships. You see it with people so much. You've been hurt, so you find it hard to open up to others. I think it's such a shame, because for some, you know, when we get hurt, we seem to put up these walls and these barriers that end up affecting future relationships and our future joy. But if we can learn to truly deal with it and embrace it and feel the pain, feel, you know, the heartbreak, it's good to cry. I love a chick flick. You've got to do it, you know. I love a rom-com. Like, I love it. Come on. Like, but you know, feeling that, riding that, crying, having, you know, eating the ice cream, go through the motions, do it, and then get back out there and what does it look like to be able to open yourself up again? Don't close yourself up. And I think, unfortunately, I know more people that tend to close. I'm the same. Like, you know, I used to do everything I can to stop myself feeling emotions, and you know, I don't want to, if something went wrong or if I had some heartbreak or if I would be like, right, okay, need to just get over this. How can I get over this feeling? Everything was about not feeling the feeling. And I think actually we've got feelings for a reason and emotions for a reason. I think we need to embrace them. We need to feel them. We need to process them. And then we need to move on.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the processes of grief and things like that are so important. We need to go through the process. And I think, and then we need to move on in a healthy way. And try not to close ourselves off. Try to leave ourselves open. And that's what being positive looks like. It's not always being positive. It's like the opposite of being negative. Like a negative thing is a bad thing. And so being positive, having positivity as our personality, is really just hoping for the best and continuing to hope for the best. Yeah. Being, you know, just because something's gone wrong once or twice or 3 times or 4 times even, doesn't mean it's going to go wrong again. And it's hoping that it doesn't. And it's looking, you know, I believe that cup is half full. Yeah. Because that's what I'm choosing to believe. Yes, past experience has told me that it's half empty. But I'm going to trust that actually the best will happen of this. Even if the last 10 times it hasn't, I'm going to trust that that this time will be different. And if it isn't, I'll trust the next time will be different. And it's kind of that sense of resilience. It comes out of building resilience in a healthy way, where we can expect the best and continue to hope for the best. Because, and it is, like I said, the whole thing of positivity, the whole reason we get to be positive is because we're living in the light of the resurrection. Death has lost its sting. Death has been defeated. And it's trusting that even if in this life we don't get to experience it, we trust that we do in the next. And that is it. It's not self-help, but it's God's help. And it's but it is hard, but it is about processing what you go through, but not letting that affect your future. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I think I've realized more and more that positivity is actually way more about trust in that sense. Like, I've had so many friends, like you say, go through breakups or relationships, like, you know, tear apart, and they're like, well, that's it then, I'm never going to be happy again. And it's like, it's hard, like, to relate to that and be like, I get it, like, I know that it hurts, but actually it's, you know, God's got something better. And it's that shift of being like, yeah, this sucks and it's rubbish right now. I know that, you know, God uses everything, and even those like really tough moments, he's going to bring beauty out of them. And so I think, in that sense, positivity is a lot of trust, essentially, in God, which it can be very difficult. It's like what we spoke about yesterday with courage. I think it's just that sense of we do these things to protect ourselves. We have we look for security in so many things, and but what does it look like to actually lay them down before God? And say, hey, look, I think the truth is we don't really, if we're really honest with ourselves, we don't really want to hear what he has to say, because I think it might not be what we want to hear. Like this relationship. Do you know what? It's not necessarily fulfilling me. I don't think my relationship is bringing me closer to God, but having this relationship does bring me a sense of security, makes me feel wanted. It's comfortable. And so actually, I don't really want that to change, please. But what does it look like if you laid that down? There is a chance he might have something else for you. And I know that is risky, that is scary, and the truth is he might, when you lay it down, you might not be able to pick it back up again. And I think, unfortunately, so many of us get stuck at that point where we're like, I think I'll keep this one. I'll give you something else later, maybe. But that is putting our security in other things. And I mean, I used to do it loads. I
remember I spoke before about when I went to America and spent some time out there. But before I went, I'd kind of recently got out of a long-term relationship. I'd kind of given up my job to move to America for a while. I was about to start the ordination process, and so I was about to start training for ordination, and so it was kind of a good time to kind of take a break. And then, so I was going to America. I'd kind of broken up that relationship. I realized I'd given up my job. So also there was not as in the job security, but also the financial security. I also didn't know how I was going to pay for America or what I was going to do when I got there. But also there was a few I also found I had a lump in my neck that I started freaking out about. I was like, oh gosh, my health's done as well. And there was quite a few different things. And I remember talking to a friend. We were on this church week away called Focus that we would go on, and a friend came up to me and he just said, hey, how you doing? And I just kind of told him. I was like, oh, this is all happening. And he was like, oh gosh. And he just said to me, he said, hey, I don't know if this is, he tried to encourage me, and he just said, mate, you're the most secure person I've ever met. He was like, that was me. And I said, thanks God, but no thanks. And I was like, okay. And then and he prayed for me and he walked off, and I thought about it a bit, and I was like, oh gosh, I felt so convicted, because I felt what he said was like security, but actually what was true was that I was trying to put my security in so many other things. I was so insecure. I was finding my security in this relationship, in money, in a job, in all these different things.
Yeah.
And I had this picture, and it's one of the clearest times I've ever felt God speak to me. And it's just this picture of me in a swimming pool, and I had all these things around me in my relationship, this money, job, blah blah blah. And I was just in a pool. I was in the water. I was right in the middle, and I kept sinking. I kept grabbing everything, and all I was doing is sinking it with me. And I just felt God say, hey, just stop and just lay back.
Yeah.
And it's like, and like, when you do that, you actually float. And it's just stop grabbing everything and just lay back and trust me. Yeah. And honestly, the weirdest thing, as soon as I did that, this guy came, tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, this might be really weird, but I just felt the need to give you some money. Here's 50 quid. Have a beer on Jesus. I was like, okay. And I just felt God was like, that's how easy it is for me to provide for you. Like, stop. And, I felt really convicted at that time that actually I wasn't living a secure life. Security comes from God, but actually we try and find it in so many other things, in relationships, in money, in jobs, in promotion. When I get to this place, I'll be fine. If I get married, I'll be fine. When I have kids, that will sort me out. It won't. When you get married, you're just two people taking your baggage into one relationship. You need to sort yourself out first. You need to love yourself before you can love someone else. You're not people think that these things are going to help them and solve their issues, but they're not. Yeah. Marriage isn't going to solve your issues. You're not going to get married and magically all your issues are going to go away. What you're actually going to do is take your issues into your marriage. And so you need to sort it out first. Like, it's the same with like jobs. When I get to this position, or when I have this certain amount of money, I can start giving. If you're not generous now, you're not going to be generous then. Like, you're just going to have more bills when you've got more money. Like, it's more money, more problems, and it's just, these are just lies that we tell ourselves. But I think that's why we genuinely just need to work out a way to lay these things down before God. Anything that we find ourselves looking for validation in, value in, victory in, like we spoke about yesterday, and just trusting Him to give us what we actually need. And it's not saying, you can't have nice things, definitely buy yourself some new trainers, do you definitely do what you've got to do. But like, I think the real question that we need to be asking ourselves is, where does our help come from? Because the Bible says our help comes from the Lord. But if it's coming from our bank account, or if it's coming from a person, a relationship, then I'd say that, we're not fully trusting in Him in the way that He's calling us to. And I think we could miss out on some incredible things. We'll become numb to the things He's doing. So,
Yeah, no, I love that. And you just moved us on to courage. And I just want to ask, like, how can we live courageously in the everyday? Like, what does it actually look like to lay that stuff down? And to me, it kind of sounds similar to what we're talking about with excellence in terms of like how you live, how you worship in the everyday. But like, what does courage look like within that?
Yeah, well, I think like I said, courage isn't so much about action, but it's about the heart. Comes from the Latin cor, which means heart, and I think it's a heart thing. It's all about that, which is worship. Like David had already been anointed king, and I love it. Actually, the whole story of David, like when if it was me, and talking about value, finding your value in God and things, like when David was made, it's kind of like Cinderella story, you know. All of his brothers are in there. His dad is like, this one, and they're like, nope, not you, no, not you. Do you not have anyone else? Is there no one? He's like, well, we do have like the young one out in the field, but it can't be him, surely. But if I was David, I'd have been in that room. I'd have been like, what? You're saying some guy's coming by to anoint the next king. It's going to be one of our... has he seen me though? I need to be there. But David was just doing his thing. Yeah. He was being him. He was staying in his lane. He was like tending to the sheep. And I think so many of us, I think the most courageous thing we can do right now in this culture is stay in our lane. It's focus on who we are, doing what we do, and trying our best to not compare ourselves to others. Like, it's so hard. I think honestly, like, that's the thing about David, is he found his value in God alone. And I think this world wants to tell us how valuable we are based on how many Instagram followers we have or how many subscribers we have. That's how relevant you are in today's society. Yeah. How much fame do you have? How much money do you have? We'll listen to you if you have a certain amount of bank, if you have a certain amount in the bank, or if you have a certain following, or it's just not true. Like, that's not the heavenly economy. That's not how God works. God will choose the unexpected, and he will use a shepherd boy to be the next king, and probably arguably the greatest king of Israel. And I think it's just that's how he works. It doesn't come from us trying to promote ourselves. True courage is, can you wait? Can you wait for God to promote you? Because he'll promote you when he's ready. And it will be when you're ready. It won't be when you think you're ready. Yeah. It'll be when he's ready. And it's, what does it look like for you to just stay in your field? To keep tending to your sheep with no one looking? That is what he's looking for. That is courage. That is having God at your heart and focusing on him with all your heart. It's, are you okay? Are you okay to be a nobody so that you can be a somebody for God? Like, are you okay with that? Yeah. Because that's what I think it looks like. True courage. Especially today when everyone is like, look at my highlight reel. But the problem is we all find ourselves comparing our everyday to people's highlight reels, and it's exhausting. And that's what I think the impressive thing is about David, is like, he found his value, but he also found his validation in God, like, and ultimately his victory came only from God. And that's what David, it is like, the flashier we are, the more things we have to show off, the less glory we can really give God. And it's the thing is, like, David had this sword. He had a king's sword, and he laid it down to pick up a slingshot. But it's because only God can slay a giant with a slingshot. Anyone can slay a giant with a sword. Yeah. And I think, so many of us are like, we need this validation in our lives. We need this value, and we put it on by having flashy things and trying to do. And I'm not against people buying nice things. I'm not saying that, but I think that we're too busy putting on filters, when really I think God wants to move in the raw. He wants to move in our everyday. He wants to move in our inmost being. That's how people be like, what? Which is what's so incredible about the disciples. Like, they were nobodies. They were a bunch of fishermen. They weren't very learned. They weren't they weren't well educated. There was nothing special about them, which is what made what they did so incredible. Which is why, and actually even today, I think one of the biggest arguments for Jesus returning from the dead, is around, his disciples scattered. The bunch of scared, little fishermen, but something brought them back together to the point when they went on and most of them were martyred and killed. And what did that? Surely only Jesus coming to them in person, that's what gathered them back together.
Yeah.
And even today, the world is still taking notice of these little fishermen because they were just the everyday. I mean, everyone expects Elon Musk to do something extraordinary. No one expects a shepherd boy to do something extraordinary. But that's how God likes to move. And so I think my encouragement to anyone who wants to be truly courageous and wants to be used by God is to stay in your lane, keep tending to your sheep, and wait for God to use you for his purposes when he wants to use you. And just keep your head down, because he will. And that's how he likes to move. Yeah. And then everyone will take note, not of what you're doing, but of what God is doing. Because only God can slay a giant with a slingshot.
Something you touched on in your courage talk, that I've kind of, it sparked something in me that you have always taught me about is about giving God like your first, and how I guess this kind of like ties positivity and courage together in terms of trust, but like in terms of giving, whether that's financially or whatever. How I remember as a student, like when it came to like financial giving, I was like, I have nothing, so I'm not giving you anything. Like I was a bit stingy in that sense, because I was like, well, there's other people who have like money to spare and whatever. But something that you've always spoken to me about, not just in terms of like financial giving, but in terms of like the first moments of my day, or like, I guess with my monthly income as well, like giving God your first. And so I just want, I think just to encourage students, like, what does that look like? How can we be courageous in giving God our first?
Well, I think it's what we're called to do. Sunday is the first day of the week. It's not the last. You know, that's why we get together on a Sunday. We're giving God our first day. And I think it's that principle. It's a discipline of actually, we don't want to give him our last, right? Well, why would we want to give God our leftovers? Yeah. We want to give, we want to give him the first. It's like that sense of like, if you're going, I don't know, like roast dinner, I always want to be first in line. You know, I want to get the best spuds, you know, the most crispy ones. I want to get that turkey leg. It's like, and I think that's what we want to give God. It's like we want to give him our first. Yeah. And I think that's in everything. That's, you know, and also I think there's something spiritual about it for us. Like if you're giving God the first part of your day, like for me, every morning I go for a walk, I take the dog out, I listen to the Bible in a year, and I have some God time. And it's because that is, not only is it because I think, I also want to, as a discipline, give the first part of my day to God. That's great. But also I think for me, it's become food. Like if I can't, it's like breakfast. It's like my day is very dependent on that time. And like, it's the best way to start the day. But also I think it's probably the best way to start the week. Sundays, that fires you up for the week. Giving God your first there fires you up. I think it's a two-way thing. We're being disciplined, and we're trusting in God with our time in this instance, and he is giving us the best start to our day, to our week. You know, there's that. But I think also with other things like giving him our finances, like the principle of tithing, giving God like your first 10%. I mean, I don't really care how much money people give. Like it's not, I'm not here to say how much you should or shouldn't give. But I think that it's that sense of it's not about being like, okay, great, I've got this, I've bought this, I've done everything I need to spend, and then what have I got left? Well, out of this, what can I give to God? It's about, okay, God, what do you want me to give to you? What can I give to you? And I think it's good. That's why I think like the standing order thing's helpful, because it's just convenient. But I think, you know, it's just praying, saying, hey, God, how much of this, of what you've given me? Because he's given you the money. I mean, if you think it's you that's earned it, you haven't. I mean, you haven't really. It's God who's given you the money in the first place. It's like the parable of the talents. He's giving it to you. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to invest it? Are you going to invest? And it's about the return you get on it. Now, the thing about God is he's not a God of addition, he's a God of multiplication. So giving God your little It's like the boy, the feeding of the 5,000. This boy had a little lunch. He just gave what was in his hands. God, we all have different amounts in our hands, different things. God wants us to give it back to him, and he will multiply it. It's not about addition. He's not going to just add to it. He's going to multiply it, and he's going to use it for his building the kingdom here. And I think it's, firstly, there's that sense of us getting in on that. We're called to get in on that. That is the calling of the church. But also, I think for us, the reason money is so important is because I think, let's actually be honest, we don't like talking about it. And if anyone finds a money talk a bit sour, then I think they're the people that really need to address this and think about it. Because, I find it awkward talking about money. I'm British. We don't talk about money. It's not a thing we talk about. It's not a great thing to talk about. But the truth is, we are the church. Citizen Church doesn't have some big golden pot of money. We had to take a loan to get this building done. Like, the only way we're going to be able to keep this building open and this church going is if the church are contributing financially. But also, it's trusting that, hey, giving what I can, which is the tithing thing's helpful because it's like, it's an amount of 10%. Give God your first 10%. And it's just a good principle. But actually, Archie Coates, my old vicar, says like, the reason he doesn't teach tithing is because he thinks that's limiting. He's like, you can give more than 10% if you want. Well, why are we limiting it to just 10? It's not meant to be so you can give less. It's like we should want to be able to give God everything that we can because we trust that he's got our backs. And it's a difficult thing. It's not prosperity gospel. I don't think that you should give to God because he's going to then give you a Lamborghini. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, but R.T. Kendall has this incredible book. It's called Between the Lines, and he talks about actually in the Bible, the only time we're encouraged to kind of test God and challenge him is over our finances, because he says, no, you give to me, I will multiply. And it's that sense of we give him our little and he will use it for a lot, for a great work, to feed people spiritually. We give our little and he multiplies. And so I think that firstly, if you're a student, you definitely can give financially. You have something to give and God will multiply that for his kingdom. I think also it's the church, is the church. We are people. We're not a building. The church, that we don't have a pot of money. So it's just that sense of we're all contributing towards building the kingdom here and towards this mission, this vision that we're all part of. And I think that there's that as well. And I think that to give as well, though, it can't come out of an obligation. It's an absolute blessing to give. So the Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive. Like that is. And I think that actually, if you're not giving, you're missing out on a serious spiritual discipline that will fulfill your life. When you give, you do receive. And I'm not talking about gold or like things. I'm talking about like there is something spiritually fulfilling in giving, in being generous. And I think we're all called to be generous. Like that's what we're called to do. And so, but yeah, I just believe anyone can give. I'm not going to speak to a specific amount, but I just think it's partnering with God, and like I said, he's a God of multiplication. So let's give our little, let's give what's in our hands and watch what God does with it. What a privilege. Yeah. How great to be part of that.
So good. So good. Well, thanks guys for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. Next week we have an extra episode because we have the wonderful Paul Cowley coming to speak to us. So we're going to be interviewing him on a bit about his story as well. So don't forget to tune into that. But otherwise, we'll see you on Sunday.